I mean, you could have a scenario where like whoever you're working with is on the same exact wavelength as you, but I just don't think that's realistic. Like me working with Sam, when I first hired him, the biggest problem was I was like, well, Sam, and this needs to be thinner. He's like, but like where? Where thinner? Like mid blade at the edge, like at the spine? It's like, well, now it's like, well, I want this area thinner. What do you name that part? So that next time when I need some correction on a blade, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And that's been a whole learning process for 3 years now. Um,
How long
Mostly,
does
hmm?
his apprentice last? Does his apprenticeship last?
As long as he wants. He's
Got it.
basically my unofficial like business partner right
Love
now.
it. Love it.
Yeah.
And did he where did you post, and this is getting into some nitty-gritty and you can, stop me if I'm going too far, but did you end up posting that you're interested in bringing someone on to help with certain tasks? Like how did you go about finding someone like Sam?
So I actually knew Sam from high school. He was one of my first friends sophomore year of high school, and
Amazing.
that was like 12 years ago. We've been in touch since then. Like, uh, he went a different path in college. I went engineering after a while, and then he did art stuff. And then I forget what happened, but he was working with me at the university making race cars. Like we were designing and building race cars, and he had a little part of that for like a half a year or a year or something like that. And I don't know what happened because, but we had this like pipe dream. It's like one day we're gonna work together and make knives. And he was shadowing me like every Monday. Just every Monday he would come in, learn a little bit here and there, and then that was it. Then one day he was just like, "Hey Don, I quit my job." I was like, "Oh shit, what?"
Oh man.
And in his head, he's like, well, I got to apply for different jobs now, and I might not be able to do the Monday shadow thing anymore.
Sure.
In my mind, I was just like, well, shit, is it time to like fully hire him now, like full time? And at that point, I had just gone full time myself. I graduated college. I was still living at my parents' place, and I had no money. Like every knife I was selling was barely covering expenses for like supplies and just random shit.
Sure.
So I was just like, fuck it. What's the worst that can happen? Which there's a lot that could have gone wrong, but in my mind, I was like, yeah, let's just hire him. And then he shows up the next Monday and he's like all bummed because he's like searching for jobs and stuff. I was like, why are you all bummed? Like, you're full time now. He's like, what?
Amazing. Amazing. Did did you find that there was, so two things. I also, and he's not my business partner, but one of my best friends from college, from culinary school, now is basically like the kind of second in command in the culinary program at my event production company.
Hmm.
And so there's been a lot of, and him and I have worked together professionally in the pop-ups that I've done. We've worked at the same restaurant together where I was the sous chef and he was the line cook or the
Hmm.
chef de partie. And so we've had this working relationship before, but for whatever reason, when it became this system, when what I'm trying to get at is how do you navigate working with friends? Because I think that it's common for people, especially in these kind of very hands-on industries, especially when there's so much of this kind of like spoken communication that's back and forth. Like you're
Hmm.
not sending Sam an internal memo to tell him to thin out the blade of a knife. You're going over to
Right.
him on the workbench and saying, "Hey man, like this needs to be fixed." And so I find, and this, also translates over into kitchen stuff, is that like it's easier to have that friendly relationship, especially if you're spending, 10 hours a day together. So, but
Hmm.
but a lot of people struggle with that, working with friends and kind of turning that friendship into a working relationship. So what has been helpful for you in navigating that?
I feel like I was lucky, number one. Like, he's been pretty great for almost every aspect. Like it took us a while to learn to work together and just to be efficient at making knives and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's to the point now where I don't even consider him like a friend. He's like my brother almost.
Right, right.
And part of that is I think you have to temper your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you have to be realistic about time frames, about goals, about like direction and that kind of stuff. For us, some days we don't really talk that much. We show up, we get stuff done, we talk about like what needs to be done and what's next and whatnot. But like some days we're just there to just make knives, and then
That's
um, some days we like have a heart to heart and we're like, okay, so where are we at mentally? How's the business going? What's the next step we can take? And we have like I don't know, just a mental check.
do you find that kind of transparency is what's needed when so two things. Do you, and this is me kind of hopefully reading between the lines, maybe it's beneficial, maybe it's not. The
Mm,
fact that it's your company is self-titled, right? That
yeah.
your name is stamped on the side of the blade, the finished product, right?
Hmm.
Is there some beneficial kind of like, that is a proverbial line in the sand, right? You guys didn't call this um, purple pig knives, right? Where it's like, oh, well, we're in this together.
Hmm.
The structuring of the business where it is your business and he is an employee, but he's also a friend, but he's also, like you're talking about, an apprentice and also a business partner, right? Like you have these
Hmm.
heart-to-heart conversations, but what I'm saying is the structure that is built into the way that the business is marketed and all of that stuff almost protects from any sort of struggles with ego or anything like that. Do you notice that? Do you think that helped unintentionally, or do you feel like you going back and doing things again, you wish you would have structured it differently?
No, I think it definitely helps. So like one important thing is Sam doesn't want to make his own knives. Like he doesn't really have an interest of like starting his own knife company or anything like that, which is I think I'm super lucky. Like most apprentices would come, they learn a bunch of stuff, then they leave and do their own thing. Um, he's kind of in it with me. Like this whole business is, we're kind of in it together. But at the same time, he's not an actual business partner. I think that's important because then the expectations are very clear. It's like I have my own direction. I have the designs I want to make, and he's there to help. And
Right.
I mean, the job description is pretty clear.
And
I,
yep, go ahead.
I think I think having things clear and laid out like that is probably the most important part. It's when you start getting like vague boundaries where things can start getting a little bit wishy-washy, and um, I don't know. I've heard a lot of things where a partnership doesn't work out because there's two different directions or multiple directions that people want to go.
Yeah, I think especially when you have these friendships that can sometimes develop because of work, right? So in at least the chef space, you hear it pretty frequently where, oh well, so and so and I worked together at insert restaurant, and then when it was time for me to open my restaurant, I called up this person that I used to work with, right? Because you have this experience of knowing how they work, what their skill set is. In a lot of respects, you can talk to them on a level where you both understand communication styles and all that stuff. I think what I'm hearing you say, and what I think people can keep in mind, is to acknowledge what variables they're dealing with, so that it makes
Right.
it easier if you go into a working relationship with a friend. What lines in the sand are already drawn, right? So
Hmm.
is it one friend's company and they're hiring another friend? Is it two friends going into business together? Were you friends before you started working together, or did you develop this friendship while you're working on a project? I think there's all these things that people need to keep in mind to
Yep.
ultimately, because at the end of the day, you and I, Don, we might have a couple of different ventures that we enter into in this lifetime, but
Hmm.
that we can't. Yes, business is a relationship, but I feel like a lot of people get caught treating friendships like they're just throwaway business opportunities. Like, oh, another one will come along, you know. But
No, absolutely not.
yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, and I think that's helpful for people to hear from you, where, you know, that this is kind of the lens by which you've decided to structure your business.